songs on our upcoming third album, which we're going to the studio to record again next month. The song is called No Choice.
Chronicles of a Lost Star is our third album. We've put way more work into this than we have for our previous ones. It's been an ongoing process for the last 2 years that's taken up the majority of our time. We've gone from like an entirely scrapped album to just working on things, like going for a week straight, multiple like all-nighters. But I think overall in the end, we all have a product that we're very proud of. Two years ago in July of 2020, the whole band came together for a week, and it was just a continuous writing process. We tried to churn out as much as we could, both musically and lyrically. We had the initial ideas of a concept, and it was originally going to be a 10-track album, but it was a much more loose concept than what we have now. So after that week that we had worked on this all, we just scrapped everything we had. We always had this idea of a rock opera, because after Amateur Therapy, that was a very personal album to write, and it was something that I thought I was a bit more comfortable in writing, because that was what most of my writing experience was in terms of lyrics. And then when we were trying to go for this concept, I remember being initially very hesitant because it's not really my realm of expertise, and it was pushing the boundaries of what I had done before, because again, we had this grand idea and we wanted to expand upon previous expansion that we had already done with Amateur Therapy from our first album. After that initial first week that was in July, we kind of took a break from it. At that point, Amateur Therapy wasn't even out yet. We thought, okay, let's kind of just focus on the release of the album that we have coming out instead of writing a third one. Later in the year, after the release of Amateur Therapy, we kind of revisited a bunch of the stuff that we wrote. We weren't super happy with it all. It was very clear that a lot of what we had, we were just trying to churn out whatever idea came into our heads. So like Alex sent us the mix downs of the demos that we had, and we had like a big discussion about where we wanted to go, if we wanted to keep anything, or if we just wanted to scrap it all entirely.
That whole process of writing those songs was a learning experience. It was the first time that I personally had sat down and tried to write an album from scratch. Back when we wrote the second album, we just sort of crafted an album of songs that worked well together. And in this case, it made more sense to write each song knowing where it would fit in the concept. The first time, it didn't really work out too well. It felt rushed, it felt sloppy. didn't feel like everyone in the band had enough say in what was going on. It was just whoever had the ideas were the ideas that we were taking. I kind of kept having ideas.
Day 2. We are going to continue doing drums today. It's going to be another long one, so cut that out. Cut that out.
The one thing from that process that we really kept was this sort of sense of dramaticism and intensity that was very present in the original concept album. The one part that was the most revealing to me in general about my shortcomings as a songwriter was during the lyric writing process for the first attempt at this, always taking the first attempt at a line and not ever considering that we need to rewrite and rewrite until something works out. We really only kept the lyrics for Mr. Static. We changed a few lines, but overall that it stayed pretty much the same throughout the writing process of both the first and second. Nothing we wrote ever ended up telling that part of the story better than what we had initially.
At end of the year of 2020, early into 2021, we started a new writing process that wasn't just a week straight. Going into that process, we tried to kind of focus on who we were inspired by musically, and I think when we had revisited it, we still had kind of the loose concept in mind, but we were still thoroughly forming everything. We wanted to make sure that we had the concept laid out, and then especially when we were writing lyrics for the songs, the lyrics fit what parts of the concept we needed. For the album as a whole, we kind of had this idea of transitioning from the lighter parts to the heavier parts. When we had a practice week in the summer of 2021, that week was a whole mess. It was perhaps maybe the most or second most tough part of recording the album, or for the writing process, because it was just a week straight of doing nothing but playing over the songs or refining them. Leading up to it, it was very much just, we want to get this album done. It was maybe a few weeks, like 1 or 2 weeks before the initial recording process for the album. All right, day 3. We are currently waiting for Bob to get here. We are 1 minute early, which means he's going to be 10 minutes late. We're finishing up drums today. Right now we are just a touch behind schedule, but for writing the songs themselves, in terms of the structure, everything was kind of done in separate ways. We had some songs that were written together, and then No Choice was one of the earlier ones that we came up with, but it was kind of inspired by the band as a whole just jamming together at one of the practices. Songs like Peerless, which was one of the ones that we originally kept from that first writing process in July of 2020. Was revamped and written all together. We would come upstairs, and then Alex and I would kind of try and figure things out, like on acoustic guitars, and try to see what kind of sounded good together, and that's where Birds and Descent came from. We are a little bit behind schedule. We're not as far ahead as we'd like to be. We finished up drums, but it's fine. We had a lot of fun with Bob despite the stress. So here's hoping we get a lot of progress done on day 4.
hopeless